I call this meeting of the Belmont-Redwood Shores School Board to order at 5 p.m. Public to address the board on closed session agenda items. To submit a question or comment on a closed session item, please complete the speaker card by the start of the board meeting at 5 p.m. During the meeting, speakers will be called upon to make their comment. If you're addressing the board on a non-agenda item, please be aware that the provisions of the Brown Act prohibit the board from acting or discussing such matters at this meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person per topic. Ms. Ellinger, are there any requests for public comment?
No, there are not.
Thank you. Item number 3, we are going to convene to close session. So I convene this meeting to close session also at 5 p.m. and we will return to the open meeting at approximately 6:15 p.m. I call this meeting to order at 6:18 PM of the Belmont-Redwood Shores School District School Board. We are reconvening to open session. Next item, call to order and the flag salute. Could everybody please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is being recorded. There is no report from closed session. Item number 7, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 8, excuse me, speakers wishing to address the board. The board appreciates and supports stakeholder input at our meetings. Engagement by members of the public in civic matters is a cornerstone of our democracy. The board has established guidelines for its meetings so that we're able to conduct the meeting effectively and efficiently. Within those guidelines, members of the public have the opportunity to address the board. To submit a question or comment, please complete the speaker card by the start of the open session at 6:15 PM. You may see Ms. Ellinger for a speaker card at this time. During the meeting, speakers will be called upon to make their comment. If you're addressing the board on an agenda item, we will call on you to provide your comment before the board discusses that item on the agenda. If you're addressing the board on a non-agenda item, we will take those comments at this time. Please be aware that the provisions of the Brown Act prohibit the board from acting on or discussing non-agenda item matters at this meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person per topic. Ms. Ellinger, are there requests for public comment?
Yes, President Northup, we have one. It's the BRSFA team, Barbara, Lisa, Kyle, and Pamela.
Thank you. We're excited to be here. We just wanted to introduce ourselves as the union team and share a little bit. My name's Barbara DeGrande. I teach special ed at Nesbitt Elementary School, and I've been in the district for 12 years.
I'm Lisa Fahey. I am the current vice president. I've been in the district for 9 years, as well as being at Redwood Shores Elementary School, and I'm currently the 4-5 combo teacher there.
I'm Kyle Ping. I teach 6th grade at Nesbitt. I'm currently the BRSFA secretary, and this is my 10th year in BRSSD.
Pamela Miller. I teach 5th grade at Cipriani Elementary. This is my 11th year, and I'm currently the treasurer for the BRSFA.
So we just wanted to share, we're here today. We hope to be more involved. Our philosophy as a union is to build collaboration and a relationship to foster open communication with teachers, the district, and the board. As part of our commitment to support teachers and students, we are implementing GLOws and Grows. We've talked with Dan about this. We talk about it with our site reps as well. And so it's a philosophy we're taking on as a GLOW and a GROW, having positives as well as areas that we can improve upon. And so we're kind of building this philosophy of GLOws and Grows throughout our aspects within the district, whether it's working with teachers, whether it's working with the district and the board. We are committed stakeholders, and we pledge to be involved in all areas, including visiting schools, collaborating with the district, and attending board meetings, as you see us here today. Let's see, I talked about the GLOws and the GROws, and we'd like to share some of the positive as well as any concerns we can have to help our district grow. So some of our glows for what we'd like to share.
So our first one's from my site, Redwood Shores. We just did Rock Your School Day, which is a whole school theme day that's supposed to energize students and get them invigorated into wanting to come to school and learning more. We voted as a staff, and our theme this year was books, which could have been something like The Good Seed, or our current read aloud books like fourth grade did Wonder, second grade did The Wild Robot, which also just came out as a movie. So the whole point was to reinvigorate the students. We did activities, we did things with theme, characterization, and STEM projects. So that was kind of our big ado.
And at Nesbitt, we have a big tradition of having It's a Party, which is been in our school for many, many years. It's a great way for our community to come together, staff, parents, students, and it's just a really fun event, something that we look forward to every year. It just grows and grows every year, and I think it's a great community building event for our school.
And at Fox, they're really seeing the benefits of having a full-time counselor, like all of our sites now. Miss Liz is helping students managing their feelings and having them help with friendship skills.
And then some of our grows, it's more of just a general thing. We continue to work and establish and maintain a positive, collaborative working environment at all sites.
So we look forward to working closely with you guys as the board to continue advancing our shared goals of providing high quality education to our students while supporting the professional growth and well-being of all staff members. Thank you.
So we are happy
Thank you.
if you'd like our contact information, if you ever have any questions, we are here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just mention, I just appreciate Barbara and Lisa. We have standing meetings every month, carrying on that tradition that we've established in the past. And I just appreciate you guys always coming to the table with that positive mindset and helping us continue to grow and maintain that positive relationship. It makes a huge difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other requests for public comment?
No, there are not.
Thank you. Item number 9, Board of Trustees report. Volunteers to go first, and I'll just say the order based on anyone who's interested. Mr. Leinbach?
Sure, I'll start off. So the Brown Act prohibits me from talking about the content of any public comments, but I will just comment that and I've been counting 62 board meetings that I've been attending. I have not had the BRSFA come up and talk to us and give us an update like that. So I just want to commend you on taking that step forward. And I think it's so positive that there's this relationship that we can talk together. And so thank you so much for doing that. It really means a lot to me. And I mean, the contact is fantastic. So I'm speechless. Now my prepared comments, I just want to let my colleagues know that in case you didn't see, CSBA is having a webinar that's titled Artificial Intelligence in Schools, Promise, Peril, Policy and Performance, which will provide a primer for local education agencies grappling with the impact of AI. So check out the CSB newsletter. It's coming up on October 30th at 10 a.m. So I encourage everyone to attend that, and it'll be a great primer for a discussion at our next meeting. So
Nice.
look for the CSBA newsletter that came out recently. And one thing I did is I attended the annual Belmont School Leadership Meeting. It was hosted by the city of Belmont and the Belmont Police Department. All schools and districts were there, BRSSD, Sequoia Union High School districts, some of the private schools, some of the child daycare centers. And the city gave us a great presentation about what they're doing to prepare, what they're doing every day to work with schools and what they're doing to prepare in the, the no event that we want to have happen, but prepare for the worst event that could happen in the community. It was a great communication, gives me confidence knowing that the city is out, really preparing ahead of time for this. And they're working directly with Dan and everyone else, or Superintendent Guard and everyone else, to make sure that the communication is open. So it's very common. So I recommend in the future, they do it, it's an annual event. So attend those and you can hear what the city is doing to to make sure that we are prepared for every event possible. And it would be nice to see Redwood City do something similar, but I'm not familiar if they do anything like that. Not yet. And that's all I have to say, so pass.
Thank you, Mr. Leinbach. Mr. Koss, would you like to go next?
Sure, I just have one thing, without going too into depth, I just I attended, September 28th, the Footsteps 30th anniversary, dinner at Hiller Museum, and it was a lovely occasion, and I'm gonna let Dan speak more to it as well. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but I just wanted to say my impressions was, 30 years is very impressive, regardless of personal relationships or as an organization, as a pillar of the community. And Footsteps has been an amazing partner to BRSSD for so many families, including my own, who have currently kids in the Footsteps Aftercare program, and during the summer camps. And I just wanted to just commend them. It was a great for that partnership, for that just that community partner, that and everything that goes along with it, just being a trusted organization for us and for our families. It was a tremendous event. What I really was shining was really the kids. The emphasis was on the kids. They came up and had a children's performance, for those of you who weren't there, which was great. They had their artwork in the main foyer of the Hiller Museum, which was fantastic. And just to see like how much care was evident. So I just really want to thank Karen Valletta, the executive director and founder, and her team for really across the board, just putting on a warm and festive event, and really just kind of showcasing that we're just excited that they hopefully have 30 more and plus years with us.
Thank you, Mr. Koss. Mr. Bruno?
Yes. I'm just going to use my time to shout out a few things that I think are kind of important to our community. One, just for students, teachers, families, we're at the midway point. And just at least in my house, I'm really my kids seem to be happy and enjoying learning and really into reading right now, things like that. So anyway, it's working. And then there's just actually been a bunch of holidays that just have me thinking about just the diversity of our community. I just want to say them out loud. So Hispanic Heritage Month just ended, which was just, I don't know, it was a very festive month again in our family and where I work in our district. Jewish High Holy Days, which again is another kind of we have it's important to our population. Indigenous Peoples Day. We just had some time off for that. Good times. Filipino Heritage Month is right now. We're in it right now. And then upcoming Dia de los Muertos and Diwali. I just want to just put those out the air, and that's my time.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Dr. Howard?
I wanted to shout out a local event that just happened, the Belmont Water Dog Run. That was this Saturday, this 12th, and hugely successful event. Lots of volunteer activity went into that, and was driven in large part by the efforts of our high school students over at Carmont that really helped make that a fantastic event. And I think this was our record-setting year for the event. It was a little over 1160 that showed up, and so we're hopeful that will continue on. But the good news is that this is the kind of event that then gives back to the community. So especially for the Belmont-Redwood Shores community, we'll be looking for grant applications, probably due around February mid. That will focus again on advancing educational, mental, and physical wellness. And as this audience may be aware, several of the grants that were awarded this last year went to BRSSD applicants. They have a nice, solid-looking weight room over there at Sandpiper.
And a lot of youth too.
Yeah, there's some great exercise equipment that ended up at Redwood Shores. Let's see, Nesbitt off the top of my head, they got some more reading materials. Fox ended up with a cool starfish lab that they are incorporating into their science curriculum. Ralston got several programs as well. So, a lot of stuff that got spread out through the district. Some great exercise equipment for our kinders over at Cipriani. And, the list goes on. So please keep an eye out for that. And I'm sure that the organizers of that event will make certain that the BRSSD staff have access to that grant application when it starts to open up. But we should have hopefully a little bit more funding to spread around this year. It's always good news.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. For myself, just wanted to highlight that I also was at the Belmont Water Dog Run, but if you were there, you may not have seen me because I was in the kitchen at Twin Pines with my fellow Rotarians cooking the pancakes. So just wanted to shout out the Rotary Club of Belmont and Redwood Shores for making all of the pancakes. And it's a great partnership that we have with Belmont Water Dog Run. And we appreciate it all in service of our school. So thank you. And then that is it. Next item is the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. So I'll start by something's a little different here. I'd like to welcome Reese Matsumoto to BRSSD, our new CBO. Welcome, Reese. As most of you know, Reese has been in the district, I'll just say almost 2 weeks now. Granted, he is a slow ramp up part-time while he wraps up some of his duties in Ravenswood. Just throughout the interview process, I want to share that Reese showed himself to be a thoughtful, data-driven school leader. He has a focus on using data to drive efficient operations with equitable decision-making. He's led strategy in Ravenswood School District, helping shape their budgetary practices and improve their transparency. He's focused on enhancing student outcomes. That's so awesome for a CBO to be focused on students. Reese was sharing with principals that his success is when he helps direct the most money to our students, that student dollar ratio. And then just overall, personally, I've been impressed by his thoughtfulness, his clarity of communication, and really his passion for work. So welcome, Reese, to the team. You are going to be a fantastic fit for our district, and we're so fortunate to have you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Second, I'll just go ahead and highlight just actually became public last month. Belmont-Redwood Shores School District was accepted into the League of Innovative Schools, which is a network of schools across the United States. There's 150 districts in 34 states. It's a network that connects forward-thinking schools and helps them collaborate on shared priorities, looking at shared challenges, and really paving the way forward. Ching Pei and I were fortunate a week before last to do a school tour with the League of Innovative Schools in just south of Fresno in Lindsay School District, doing a lot of innovative work, really bucking some of the trends and making an impact on students with many different needs, English language learners, a migrant population, and they're showing growth across the board. And largely in part, that's due to the community and the culture that they've built. We saw evidence of that as we toured their transitional kindergarten through high school programs. I will admit I got a little sidetracked in the agricultural and the high school, where we got to see them working with bunny rabbits and pigs, really the agricultural side. And they were invested in agricultural sciences. Another thing that stood out is within district, they actually work really hard. They've created a program for their high school students. They can go directly from high school into a pathway for education that is taken care of by the partnerships that they have, so students can go to school, come back and teach in the district, all as part of a program that's been developed. Really nice to see how the system has aligned and how they've built that culture and that magic, and it shined in all the classrooms. So really looking forward to continuing to be a part of that network, the League of Innovative Schools. Couple other things I'll mention. As David shared, I was honored to be at the Footsteps 30-year celebration. And I did bring, they recognized the district honoring Belmont-Redwood Shores School District for its continued support and partnership with Footsteps Childcare on our 30th anniversary. And like you said, David, Karen is a pillar in our community, really advocates for our students, our children, not only when they're young, but as they go through. She does a lot of work with our school and within our district. So we appreciate Footsteps and specifically Karen. Today was the great shakeout. We all had, I just look and they're like.
They're still shaking.
What I appreciated about today's event, and we've participated for a number of years. This year we elevated it a little bit. We added a couple scenarios. We added a jam door, a student with a broken arm, and a gas leak, really to test the skills. Thing where you broke your arm today.
Fast recovery.
And I will say it was our first really formal go of the new walkie-talkie system that we put into play last year. You might remember we purchased walkie-talkies for each of our classrooms, as well as enhanced the communication between the school sites and the district office. So during the drill, site principals were working with their teams and site leaders. It wasn't just principals. We had teachers calling up that had been assigned that duty. We had classified staff that were relaying their needs to the district office. District office was connecting with the sites and we were able to triage and practice that. So definitely some areas to grow and refine, but overall, it was a really good drill today. So we encourage, you probably saw the notice that went home, encourage families to do the same, to be prepared at home. We also sent a link to all of our families about the Big 5 protocols in San Mateo County that are uniform across the board. Encourage families to take a look at that as well. And then the water dog race was also awesome. That was on my list. Trustee Howard, I think our community had fun pedaling and making smoothies at on the smoothie bike. It was a great morning. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent DeGuara. Item number 11, School Spotlight, Sandpiper. And for this, we'll hear from Principal Gloria Higgins.
Good evening, trustees, Superintendent DeGuara, cabinet members, staff. Thank you very much for coming. I was just thinking that I could toss the slideshow out and just say a little something about every person here from Sandpiper, and it would really shine. It would show you exactly what's going on at Sandpiper, and it would show off the leadership skills of the people here tonight and the entire staff. So I'm just really proud of the staff. Thank you very much for coming. You're going to see your work in the presentation tonight. I don't think I have to go over this slide with you guys. You've seen this before. Okay, great. I will ask you though to engage with me a little bit in this core thinking routine. It's called Connect, Extend, Challenge. This comes out of Project Zero. And this is a little bit of new learning that our staff will engage in starting on November 1st. So this will look new to the staff as well. So as I go through the presentation tonight, I want you to think about how are the ideas and the information that you're hearing connected to what you already know. What new ideas, hopefully you get some new ideas that you get from me, broaden your thinking or extend your thinking in a different direction. And then what, not if you get challenged, but what challenges or puzzles emerge for you. And there will be a test at the end. So big fan of color coding. It's a metacognitive strategy, actually, and you're going to see that a little bit. But these align to our district strategic plan and also to our district learner profile, which many of the staff members here tonight helped participate in developing. For Sandpiper, metacognition is really our strategy to address thinkers and figuring out how we're going to help students become deep critical thinkers. Design thinking is our approach to innovation. And our work with DEIB, all the cultural celebrations, all the social emotional learning, all the pieces around identity that we celebrate at Sandpiper, really elevate the value of DEIB, and we hope create a strong sense of belonging for our students. And we're going to hear a little bit about Stingray families tonight. And then finally, to address that long-term sustainability aspect of the strategic plan, Sandpiper really focuses on our professional learning community work. And the way that that happens is mainly through release days, which we just completed a round of for all of our grade levels and department teams that we're going to see a little bit about tonight. Some pictures, and it's always tempting for me to talk through the pictures and all of these. The one that I want to highlight here is that 63% rated positively. That is from our Youth Truth Survey last year, where our students say that the work that they do for their classes really makes them think. That's a really good number, 63% positive rating. It came out of the academic challenge strand from the Youth Truth Survey. And while we're very proud of that number, it was the lowest rated area from our students for both our middle school and elementary students. Hence, our focus on metacognition that is directly related to and advised by Youth Truth to see if we can increase that sense of academic challenge for our students. As I said, this is new learning for us. So I'm right in the middle of learning about it myself. I have a sense of what I think metacognitive means, but there's all kinds of stuff there. Like, do I have enough knowledge of the task? Do I know enough about strategies like color coding? Could that be a good strategy for me? Do I know enough about myself to be able to plan, monitor, and evaluate my learning? And you can see that cycle kind of feeds on itself. And you get a lot of synergy out of that. So we're going to try out some core thinking routines. As I said, that's out of, actually, I don't think I said, comes out of Harvard's Project Zero. That challenge, extend, or I might have to go back here for a second. What was it called? See how we're learning? Connect, extend, challenge is one of those core thinking routines. Right. Belonging and inclusion. We're very proud of the work that we do here. What we have seen over the years at Sandpiper is our focus on that really has an impact. This is generally the highest rating response that we get from our students. They feel a very strong sense of belonging at Sandpiper. And that is thanks again to the great work of the people here. This year, we are implementing something new. Those of you with familiarity with Nesbitt and Redwood Shores will recognize the family structure. That's new to Sandpiper. And our goal really is to develop cross-grade level relationships. So our TKers are comfortable with our eighth graders. Our eighth graders are leading. That's a secondary goal for us. Our eighth graders are developing some leadership skills in that. And it's an important opportunity for all of our staff, classified, certificated, custodians, teachers, to participate in building relationships with students and each other. I'm going to say a huge shout out to Andrea, who's here, who is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, along with Valerie in the eighth grade to get those eighth graders ready. Our first family day will be Monday. So can't wait to see how that goes. Community engagement. You can kind of see some really great examples of our focus on bringing families in, getting students excited about current events like hurricanes through the newspaper. See, I could talk about all of these things. Kristen is our journalism teacher. And the newsletter for eighth grade, a great example of making sure that families are getting feedback about what our students are doing in their classrooms. Our big focus here are info nights, parent education, whether it's about what's the curriculum your students are learning, but also what do you need to know about current trends in mindfulness and student social emotional lives. So principal coffees, mindfulness, we're very proud. Our parent is Lily Pan, who leads some mindfulness activities for the district staff. You can see there an example of one of our information nights from a year or two ago. That was a design thinking night. So really working on those family relationships with our parents and community. Finally, and I don't know if I could pick like the thing that I'm the proudest of, but I'm very proud of the work that our staff is doing in this strategic goal area. This is for our long-term future, and we're really building the collective efficacy and capacity of our staff through release days. You can see some of the feedback that the staff leaves for each other. Loved how you got a student to take a risk by saying, do you want to try it? So what this looks like for our class is that for our teachers and our grade levels is they get 3 release days a year. Part of the focus of that day is one of our signature practices, and they get to choose which one they want to focus on. This time around, all of the grade level teams focused on metacognition. Again, we're in that learning phase for that. This is also where we take district work, work that came out of the teacher leader committee on power standards, so that we're making sure that we're reviewing what are our power standards? Are we hitting the right targets? Are we spending the right amount of time on the most important targets for our school? Because we know that we can't get to every single standard every single day. We need 22 years to be able to do that. The most impressive part, the most fun part, I think, and I think the team would also agree, is the instructional rounds opportunity. And this is when our staff get to walk through classrooms. We walk through together. We are looking with a lens of our signature practices. And we're also looking for that opportunity to give glows to each other. We know that the best learning occurs when you can see people in your job doing a similar kind of job, and you get so many great ideas from that. And I think it shows in the work that we have done. Uncharacteristically, I am very brief tonight. It is time, actually, I did want to say, I'd love to invite, if anyone on the staff has anything to say, they could challenge me as well. Any inspiration striking? All right, thank you.
Want to show? I'm kidding.
The board gets a copy of the amazing, like, one of the amazing things that happens. One of the truly amazing things that happens at Sandpiper comes out of the culture of just friendship that we have as a staff. And Susan is a big part of that as one of the social committee chairs. And next week we have our charcuterie showdown. There's a wonderful video that I'll make sure to get to you, and you can see Susan fighting with
And Nicole.
And Nicole. All right, quiz time for you. How did the ideas or information that you heard tonight connect to something you already know? What new ideas did you get that broadened your thinking or extended it in a different direction? And what challenges or puzzles emerged for you?
I'll go.
Okay.
So no, one of the things I actually was thinking about it, broadening my thinking, when I think about metacognition, that knowledge, there's a knowledge piece and a regulation piece, and how they kind of interact and connect.
Okay.
Connecting it to things you already know, like you mentioned, the Nesbitt families.
Yes.
So that was really great to see that Sandpiper is starting the Stingray families, and
Yes.
that's awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I should say, like, it is a joy to work with the principal team that we have. We get a lot of great ideas from each other. And so really glad to be able to steal great ideas like that.
Connected challenges.
Great.
I'm very curious about the power standards,
Oh, okay.
how those are being identified and how they might be used to improve our articulation from grade to grade to grade.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So Jingpei, I thought was going to be here tonight, so I'm going to say, you should refer to Jingpei. The teacher leaders actually did a significant amount of work, and Valerie is one of our teacher leaders, so we could speak to this too. Look at that. Teacher leaders spent a significant amount of time reviewing all of the standards in their grade level. And that's where that line about, 22, 23 years, like if we taught every single standard, TK would probably add some years, TK through 12th grade. The research is pretty clear that it would take 23 years. And we have 13 or 14 years with students. And so we know that, yes, we want to teach all the standards, but there are some standards that we are going to guarantee to our next grade level or to our families and to our community that our students are going to master in a particular year. And those are the ones that we focus on reteaching, the ones that we focus on providing intervention for when a student doesn't meet that standard. And so when we have the opportunity to collaborate as a team about that, we really get the opportunity to say, how are you teaching that standard? I taught that standard this way and my results were not as good as yours. What can I do to learn from you about how? Did I answer your question? All right, great.
I'm going to add to that. There's research that shows that when teachers stay in their own classrooms, they only see what's in their four walls. And I see what's in my four walls most of the day. And I think that that's the same thing that April sees in her four walls. But when teachers are able to get outside of their four walls and see other connections, they're able to see, we are a little bit different and maybe we get a little bit different results. And I know when I just happened to drop by the latter half of one of their release days, those were the conversations that they were having about their planning and their benchmarks to assess students to move forward. So I think that's a very forward-thinking idea in those collaboration days. I think that probably gets one of the Connect Extend.
Oh, okay. You passed the quiz, Dan.
It was a yes and.
Thank you for actually saying that too, because I wanted to connect to what Barbara was saying about visiting schools. And so the next round of release days, our focus is on getting our teachers, not just in our own classrooms at Sandpiper, but to some other schools as well. Last year, our kindergarten TK team did that, and we hope that this year every grade level team could do that.
Trying to ask about that.
Okay. Your question?
You answered it. I was gonna ask my answer. I connected with the concept of exceptional rounds. It's like maybe something I already know and appreciate. And I try to do the same thing as a parent, as a 6-year-old soccer coach, as a board member, things that are just kind of like watching what other people are doing and really watching how somebody handles like the kid with the scraped knee or how you teach math, right? Something I had be thinking differently is I will say I guess I can't call myself new to the district anymore, but still like young kids and new in this role, but like I sometimes wonder about the idea of like a TK or K-8 and like sometimes it's even we talk about like in a deficit mindset, but so with the Stingray families and like 8th graders leading and like the awesomeness that you actually have right there at your fingertips to take these humans to be like, hey, you're right here with them and lead the way. That seems like an amazing opportunity. So I just love hearing about that. And then I had the same idea or challenge in my head as a puzzle. I kind of wondered with the power standards, always wondering like as you make a choice of how far you can go, it's like what's right past that. And not that you're doing it wrong per se, but you're like, oh, I need forever to teach all the things, so I'll only go this far. I always wonder in general, whenever you're making that kind of decision, like what was on the other side of the wall that you put up,
Yeah, great question. Always something to think about if, we all want more time in the day to get to it all. One of the PLC questions that we ask ourselves is, what do we do when our students don't know it yet? And what do we do when they already know it? So that's that piece about getting to like, how do we extend? But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Thank you for asking about that.
I love to definitely like connected with the mentorship and just providing the 8th graders and really anybody with that kind of those opportunities to really kind of shine, right? So that they feel like, okay, maybe they are feeling like they're not as confident in their own 8th grade world, but they can shine in other ways and show that. And I think that's great to give them those opportunities, especially since the little kids, they just love it. I don't know if you, but I find that kids who have been in with the Nesbitt families my kids have said that it's just so fun. They go around, they say hi to 8th graders. I'm like,
Yeah.
How do you know like an 8th grader? So I think like specifically Nesbitt and Sandpiper have that connection through the middle school, to really provide that K-8 connection space that maybe another just strictly elementary school wouldn't. So I think that to leverage that, definitely something to continue to do. I want to learn more just by my own about this metacognition, so I'm definitely going to go to this Project Zero thing and find out about it, but also to how to utilize it well in the education space, I think is great. One of the things that keyed in on that 63%, and I was so impressed at the state of the district last year with the eloquence of this kid, the student speakers that you had up there. It's still such a powerful snapshot for me to recall. And I wonder with the electives and keeping in mind that 63%, how can that go up, especially since, as you said, that's a high number, but it's not it's the lowest of all of them. And I'm like, well, how do you create those positive experience? So I'm wondering, is there room for them in these electives that you do? Do they have choice now? If you could remind me how much choice they have, how do these electives get formed? Can they have more of a say so that they feel like not only, yes, that curriculum is interesting, but I had a chance maybe to even kind of create it or definitely choose
Yeah.
to have it.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
Yes, thank you very much for asking that. So, and I went to this slideshow because the top right corner, and again, speaking to the expertise and the talent in the room, Lynn on the end there, developed an elective around the Renaissance and design. And so our student there was working on some of the Da Vinci inventions, designs. Actually, we have a lot of middle school teachers here right now. They have all developed some new electives in the last couple of years. In addition to the electives, so yes, there is choice. In 6th and 7th grade, they take 2 of the same electives, first and second trimester, and then they have a choice in the 3rd trimester. In 8th grade, they have a choice every trimester. But in addition to the electives, you see Quest Time. That's our new name for Genius Hour. We'll credit the middle school team for that. I believe Lynn gets credit for that too. Wanted to get away from that genius label and really focus on the process. So it's Quest Time now. That's Sandpiper trademark. Gets that one. So Quest Time is an opportunity for students to develop their own passion projects and really go deep into their own kind of learning. And they really do have to reflect on their own thinking, developing that metacognition. And then finally, intercession, which we're just starting to have some emails about because coming up during conference week, we'll do another round of intercessions. And that is an opportunity where students get to choose 2 mini electives, kind of, if you can think about it that way. And Dan actually got to see on Friday a teacher starting to plan a music survey, history of music intercession. So should be cool.
Great.
Dr. Howard?
No, I'm good. You can go first. I was gonna say, if there's time, I would love to give you kudos and speak in front
Oh, well, thank you.
There's always time, right? Always time for kudos.
So, I'm always amazed by the work at Sandpiper and the quality of the student that matriculates from there. In fact, I get to see those kids up at the high school and I get to see how they've become leaders, many of them, right? What can we do to better support your work as districts? Are there systematic things that we are doing that are making it more challenging for you? Are there systematic things that we can improve? Are there holes in our approach that you see as a site that could be adjusted that might make your work a little bit more either celebrated or robust or easy or create more lanes of personnel to your site?
Well, you're kind of hitting on one there. Personnel is always a challenge, right? We have an amazing, talented team, and we do still have some vacancies. And I think that's true across all education spaces. Particularly concerned about teaching shortages. And so anything that we can do to enhance the professionalism of teaching is something that's going to help all of us. And I would say, so I'm just trying to go to Where's your strategic plan slide? I don't know why I was going to go there. Okay. One of the things that I think would really be beneficial, and it may be a little bit of a pipe dream, but we spend those 3 release days on professional development. It's true collaboration and it's true professional development and learning for our teachers. And I always think that anything that we can do to increase the amount of professional development days that a teacher has available to them is something that could be very beneficial to each site. Lots of steps from here to there, but that's something I think we could strive for. I will also just express some appreciation for the strategic plan and the learner profile. I joined the district right in that pandemic year, like kind of in this gap between an old strategic plan and a new strategic plan. And for me, I'm somebody who thrives with alignment. I'm happy to do a little bit of like making it our own at Sandpiper, but I like that. Like, what am I connecting to? And the strategic plan framework and the learner profile framework does that. So I would, thank you for that work. Those are two things I think. I think a third thing, if I got to pick another thing, would be more opportunities for parent-teacher cooperation, collaboration. I think that's something that we strive to bring our families in and make sure that they have a strong understanding of what we're doing, what's expected of their students, what they can expect of us, and just looking for more opportunities to bring those two groups together would be great. Thank you for asking. I'm really tempted to turn it over to Valerie.
Yes.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know what she's gonna say.
Sorry that I raised my hand before. This is totally improvised, but now that I've had some time to think about what I wanted to say. Well, first of all, my name is Valerie Gao, and I teach 8th grade math, algebra 1, science, and 3 electives. I teach textile design, which is kind of something I made up. It's sewing, crochet, embroidery, and dyeing fabric, as well as Japanese culture and language, and graphic art, which is like drawing with tablets. And that would not be possible without the support and amazing time and funds and everything that Gloria has given us. It's been a lot of fun. It has been a lot of work, but it's also been a lot of fun. As well as the intersessions that I teach, which in the past has been Japanese culture and chemistry, but I'm trying to move on since my electives are, or at least one of my electives is very similar. And then I also wanted to give kudos to Gloria because we have been doing so well with being inclusive, and I really think that part of it is her support with a club that I sponsor, which is Rainbow Alliance. That's our GSA. Ralston has Saga, and I was actually part of a Saga meeting when I originally taught at Ralston in 2019, and then moved over to Sandpiper. Been very happy there ever since. It was just kind of like a social gathering. Kids were just kind of like chatting, whatever. And I just sort of felt like something was missing. And so when I decided to sponsor the Rainbow Alliance at Sandpiper, I realized that I kind of don't want them to learn stuff from the internet. I kind of want to teach them about some of the stuff, like where did the rainbow flags come from? Why do we have National Coming Out Day, which by the way was on October 11th. I guess, since then, it's just been a really great community. We've been able to do assemblies and we've been able to educate people about the community and, very appropriate ways. But it's just been so nice. And I think that the students really feel so much more included now and so much more safe now, especially with the wave of very draconian laws that were coming out in other states. It was a scary time for LGBTQ+ students. And so I definitely wanted to thank Gloria for her support.
I wish I could take credit for all of that, but it takes Valerie, Anisha, Lynn and Kristen, actually everybody here almost leads clubs. Reese, to your point, I think, or to Dan's point about you, making sure that funds are spent on students. This is the way in which we do it. And so I'm looking forward to working with you to be able to do that. Didn't come, like, I didn't give you the money, I allocated the money. The money comes from Reese now. So. All right, thank you all so very much. Any other last minute questions?
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Item number 12 is our Ed Services update on fall assessments and interventions. And we'll hear from Assistant Superintendent Ching Pei Hu.
Sorry, I'm late. I put on my parent hat for a little bit today and was hosting the 8th grade info night at MA, passing out folders to all of the 8th grade families and setting up food for the staff and all of that. So I did a quick that and then came back and saw your wife and all is good. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our usual fall stuff. I'm going to give you a preview of our spring 24 CASP performance. I think this might be the first time since this board has been in place where the state level data have been public so early again. It used to consistently be August, September timeframe, and then the world went haywire. So I'm happy to be able to have official results to share. We'll look at how our students are doing in terms of their fall screeners and talk a little bit about next steps in progress monitoring and tiered interventions. Okay. I know you can't see the specifics of the scores. You kind of don't need to. You have the ELA performance on the left and you have math performance on the right. You have the standard 4 colors that we're used to seeing: red, yellow, green, blue, being performance levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, or not meeting standards, approaching standards, meeting standards, exceeding standards. In each of the graphs, there are 4 columns. The very far left is the state of California. The second one is BRSSD, followed by San Carlos and Burlingame. And we choose San Carlos and Burlingame because they're similar in size to us, as well as socioeconomic status. And you can see there's consistency across the board. We outperform the state significantly, which is a great thing. We continue to have between 78 and 80% of our kids overall in grades 3 through 8 meeting and exceeding standards in ELA and math. This is despite the fact that we're post-pandemic. This is despite the fact that some of these kids had disrupted instruction for their primary years. This is despite the fact that we hear from all of these lovely teachers here, kids aren't as ready as they used to be. Kids have far more things going on. They're spending their day doing, in addition to teaching, reading, writing, math, and yet our scores are staying static. So on the one hand, our scores are static and you can walk away feeling, we're not making gains, but our kids are different and teaching them is harder, and yet we are still maintaining high levels of performance. And I think that's a win. What you'll see in the student groups, same thing. I know you can't see the specifics. I've blacked out the student groups that are statistically too small and for privacy's sake. But ultimately on the left is ELA again, and on the right is math. If I did that correctly, hopefully I did. I can't even see that. The purple is the average performance over 2 years. So the 23 scores and the 24 scores. And then all of the colored boxes to the right are all the different student groups. So we have Black African American, Blacked out American, Indian, and Native American because we have too few students, Asian, Filipino, Hispanic, et cetera, right? So what you can see is the average performance of some student groups is higher than the overall, and the average performance of some student groups is lower than the overall. We continue to have performance gaps in certain groups of students. I think all students can achieve at high levels. This is not a demonstration of innate ability. We as a system need to do better to change the patterns. There is growth from left to right. That is the value add of our teachers working with these specific groups, and that is always a win. But what we want to try and do is make it such that it's not predictable based off of what your socioeconomic status is or your skin color is. where you're going to end up in the overall performance. In screening, this is so exciting to me. I think you guys are all think I'm a total dork. I know, it's okay. I just want to remind the group that in my very first year here in May, we had a stampede of teachers who were questioning why we were collecting data on a specific timeline. And it wasn't about not trusting the data, and it wasn't about not trusting the teachers. But what it is about getting us aligned so that we can look at the overall health of our district. We implemented a new screener last year. All of the teachers were trained, all of the teachers, thankfully, thank you, did it. We have between 92 and 98% completion of all of our students' grades K-8. And for kindergarten and first grade and second and third, kinder and first is 100% one-on-one. Second and third grade, half of the test is given one-on-one. So despite there being a need to pull these kids individually, between 92 and 98% of our students have been screened. And I think that is enough. I mean, that's a high enough completion at that 98% rate that it accounts for some of our students in our SECs who actually don't take the screener because they're not on the same track. It accounts for kids that are here today that weren't enrolled when we were doing the screeners. But you'll see what I did for you was I pulled out the 4 different tests and looked at the performance levels again, because I made this chart. I used the same colors we're accustomed to with the red, yellow, green, blue, red being level 1, not meeting standards, 2 being, not totally, this is the translation. Red is actually high risk, but you can look at it as not meeting standards. Yellow is considered some risk, or in some other, in CASP language, it's the approaching standards. Green is low risk, and blue, Fastbridge used to default this as college ready. We think that's ridiculous. So we internally changed that to exceeds. They're kids who are above standard at the moment, right? So that's basically what the 4 levels are, even though they are actually high risk, some risk, low risk, exceeds standards. I mean, we don't ever want to say no risk, but it's essentially saying they have no risk at the moment. In auto reading, it's not auto reading, in adaptive reading, that's your general reading skill. It's adaptive. It gets harder as kids get scores right. You can see we have about 80% of the kids meeting or exceeding fall standards at the moment. Not a high percentage of kiddos that we're worried about. 7% are at high risk. Those are the ones that are going to be seeing reading specialists. That's given to all students 2nd through 8th grade. Auto reading is the phonics phonemic awareness assessment given to all students in 4th through 8th grade. And using that, 3% of our kids are at high risk. If you look at CBM reading, this is the fluency metric that's given to only 2nd and 3rd graders. It's the one-on-one portion of their assessment. We can see that 7% of those students are considered at high risk. And when we look at the early reading English assessments, we can see that 6% of our kiddos right now are considered high risk. So those numbers are phenomenal in terms of what kids are coming into the year with and what our teachers are going to be able to focus in on. A fairly small number of kids at need. For kids who are in the green and blue in each of these screening measures, it's basically saying the whole group instruction is appropriate. Keep doing what you're doing. We're going to meet the needs. They're predictably going to be at grade level at the end of the year. Those in the red and the yellow ones are the ones that we're monitoring. When we look at our fall writing benchmarks, this is not a screener, this is a benchmark assessment. We give this assessment in grades 1 through 8 at this time of year at all of our sites except Ralston. Ralston does have their own writing test. I'll share their information with you next month or the next time I speak to you because they're just on a little bit of a different schedule and it takes a little bit longer for the teachers to each individually go through 150 essays. But we got scores for 78% of the expected students. And you'll see that 50%-ish, 52.6, 53% of our kids are meeting fall expectations. This is consistent to what we see in our CASP claim data in terms of kids who are above standard. It's hard to see, oh my gosh, only 50% of our kids are meeting fall standards. It is a rigorous assessment. It is a difficult rubric. We have high expectations for our kids. This is pretty standard for where we start the year. Like I said, it's also consistent with our CASP data of that percentage of kids are actually exceeding standards. Okay. When we look at our fall math benchmarks, again, you can see K5. 6, 8 does do benchmarks together, but they all have various tests at different levels, whether they're Common Core or AS or at Sandpiper and Nesbitt. So it's not reported here, but you can see this is measured against end of year expectation. Because so many of our kids end the year doing so incredibly well, testing them on what they know from last year really is redundant. We instead test them on what they're going to learn this coming year to get a sense of where are the students, where are the areas where the majority of students are already knowing this, and I can spend a little bit less time. So it is expected to see far more red. Because remember, this is end of year expectation. Even so, if you look at every single grade level, we have between 7 and 21%, 7 and 24% meeting or exceeding end of year expectations coming into the year. So it's really important, as Gloria was talking to power standards. Our team has worked to align power standards. It is, I mean, the standards are defined. The scope and sequence is a living document. It's a work in progress. So we are wanting feedback, but ultimately we can use this to say, hey, kids already know this power standard. I don't need to spend time in my classroom this year on this because 85% of my kids came into the year knowing this. I can pull those 3 kids who don't know and teach that individually and move on to the next piece because they have the foundational skill. So having this level data is intended to be useful in the classroom to monitor and change instruction. We've also done our first round of fall SEL screeners. This is the SABRS. This is the Social, Academic, Emotional, Behavior Risk Scale. And there is SABRS, which is the teachers filling it in for every student, TK8, as well as MySabers, which is students filling it in 3rd through 8th grade. There are a handful of kiddos in that first column on the left that were given the assessment too early. They were outside of the window. So for the teacher perspective SABRS, there's 41 kiddos, but if you put that in, we're still looking at roughly 10 to 11% of our students at some level of risk, with 1% at high risk. If you look at the MySabers, it looks like it's super alarming because that first bar has 25% of kids at risk. That's actually only 4 students assessed in that. So I'm gonna guess that somebody had some concerns about a particular student. I didn't dig into this yet. So they had the child take the MySabers early outside of the window. The guidance from Fastbridge is actually that we don't do any sort of emotional screener until at least 6 weeks of school have passed, because we want to get to know the child. We want to be out of the honeymoon phase. We know that some kids have a honeymoon phase and then they fall apart, and other kids take a little bit of time to get to regulation. So that's part of why. And so we have to be really careful. I'm not super concerned about that one rating for those 4 kids.
I'm sorry, the first 2 bars here, what's the difference between the fall and fall SABRS?
Fall, so we have 5 assessment windows within the school year. Fall, winter, spring are basically periods 1, 3, 5 that are meant for ELA math screening. And then we have 2 subsequent ones that we've added on a different timeline for fall SABRS and spring SABRS that fall in between the academic assessments.
Okay, they're just time period.
They're time periods. And so SABRS is not supposed to be given in that fall window because that's the first 6 weeks of school. So there's validity questions about assessing an SEL screener before we really have gotten the kids into a routine. So like, what next? What's happening? You have one of our amazing counselors here. They are looking at their SABRS data. They are working with their principals and following up. Now that we have that information, the next step for them is, are there specific small groups that we need to be running? Are there specific lessons at a grade level that we're following through on? That's happening from an SEL perspective, from a math and ELA perspective. Your teachers have these reports called screening to intervention reports that we've trained last year and kind of reminded on. This is a sampling, and I blacked out the student, but this is basically what the teachers get to see. They pull up their class list and they get to see what percentage of my kids are on track. So in this particular class, there's 50% who are on track in terms of phonemic awareness, 71% on track in terms of phonics and fluency, and 50% on track based on the A reading. This is a little bit more of a struggling class. It just is what it is. So based on the data and how all of the students perform, Fastbridge does spit out to this particular class, a whole group intervention would be spending some time looking at phonemic awareness and phonics, given the percentage of students who are struggling. So depending on how the students do on the assessments, the teachers are then given recommendations of, should I be doing this whole group or should I be doing this small group? And then for each individual student, you'll get to see what their scores are and if they're at some level of risk or high level of risk with a recommended instructional plan. We told teachers last year, you just need to get used to the screener. You don't need to worry about the second half. We're going to do that this year. So what we're doing for November 1st is training folks now on this progress monitoring component. There is a recommended progress monitoring tool for the students who have the single and double exclamation points. There is a plan with our reading specialists to assess some, and then we're going to be training the classroom teachers for them to know which ones they're going to be in charge of and what that looks like. There's a progress monitoring tool because we all know that we just assess kids and we do nothing different. When we assess in January, and I think we saw this last year, some kids slipped because we weren't being real refined with what we were doing. And it's hard to know what kids need, right? That's why we want to rely on some of these software tools that can get really detailed into the minutia of this is the skill this child is missing, and this is the foundational skill that this child needs before they're going to move on. We have several first grade students. I actually think I picked a second grade here, but we have several first grade students who will score really high on the general reading piece and have phonics and fluency pieces missing. And those are the kids, anecdotally speaking, that we've heard about from families who by 5th or 6th grade are the ones who end up being diagnosed with being dyslexic. Because we didn't do the explicit direct instruction. We didn't have the great phonics program. We didn't have the assessment to see where the gaps are. We're not going to prevent you from being dyslexic, but we are, if we do these assessments and we respond to them with the progress monitoring and with our vast tool belt that our teachers have expertise with and several tools that we're going to provide for them, we can give the explicit skill and the kind of compensation skill such that it doesn't become detrimental to my reading comprehension later down the line. So it's important to focus on phonics and phonemic awareness at all ages. And so this is the type of report that they get, and we're going to really teach them what to do with it because several have piloted, but really there's more to learn. The teacher's job is never ending. Getting really specific on data is something that just takes time. So hence the slow roll. We're going to do progress monitoring this year. That's it. What questions do you have?
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Hu. For my fellow board members, can we have it that each person asks one or maybe a follow-up question and then we move on to another board member and that we could always do a second round? But I would just like to keep us all engaged and not monopolize Assistant Superintendent Hu for a long time and allow the other board members to have a chance. So
I make a motion.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. So who would like to go first? And then, as I said, maybe one question and then maybe a follow-up question, and then we go on to another board member.
I will go first.
Trustee Bruno.
You said something that I don't know if it was on your slides. You just said it and I'm curious about it. You said there's some students who don't take the screener because they're not on that track. I'm just curious what that means.
We have some students who are in, for example, a mod severe SCC class. These kids are on a certificate of completion track. They're not on a graduation track.
Yeah.
They are not necessarily taking grade level academic screeners. They are learning life skills, and that is the appropriate thing. So
Yeah.
Jenny and I are working on getting some better curriculum to bring them opportunities to do grade level standards, but we do have a handful of students who I'm not testing their reading skill.
Right. And then part like percent of population, what number we're talking about? One.
We're talking 1, 2, 3 classrooms, so 30 kids out of 4,000. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Foss.
So this is a four-part, one question.
Okay. I leave it to your board president to go for it.
No, my one question is, so these assessments are great, and I love getting the CAS data and looking at it. But to kind of piggyback on Principal Higgins'
Yeah.
thing around parent-teacher, kind of increasing parent-teacher collaboration, I wonder, can these kind of things, whether it's a dashboard or a monitoring, can it get, like, how do we envision the parents seeing this so that they can kind of be more, also learn to be proactive and in maybe flagging things that they're seeing at home or otherwise?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the appropriate vehicle might be the parent-teacher conference, but that's so jam-packed and also limited. But I would, I think a lot of families would love to have those kind of interactive conversations, even more than they do around just reading and math, but bringing in some of this data to support whatever their child needs. Is that something maybe that you're envisioning down the road? Like, how is that a pipe dream, or like how can we have that balance between, a little bit more stats
Yeah.
in these parent-teacher conferences to be able to then.
I mean, I think there's a couple of components to it, and I'm almost afraid to say it out loud, but I think the timing of our conferences is one issue for us.
Okay.
Because we do fall screeners in September, October to get a baseline of where the kids are, and we start understanding what's happening and who do I worry about, who do I need to speak with immediately. And ultimately, I think for teachers, what happens is I'm meeting with those kids in the red and their parents twice. Because I'm meeting with them as soon as I find out that they don't have everything that they need to be successful this year, and we have to put a plan into place immediately. And I'm not having parent-teacher conferences until after 60 days of school have passed. So if I wait until the end of trimester 1 to have that conversation, I've lost a third of the year. Whereas we get this data within the first 5 weeks of school, right? So I think that's a component to it. I do think as we all learn how to use FastBridge a little bit better and learn how to personalize some pieces, there's some great strengths of FastBridge and there's some weaknesses. Their reports are great, but their individual student reports are too heavy. There's too much information in it. It's almost too technical. It's not parent friendly. So while there's a ton of information that I could provide you, I think Susan has asked me and we've looked at it, it's too much information. Like, I don't need to know that they have already accomplished 15 skills and they're working on 30 skills and then they have another 12 standards, right? That's too detailed. So I think the kind of work as we transition is tailoring better data reports out of the reports, the assessment screeners, so that we can give families better information. But I think that comes with learning what works in the system, what works for the teachers, what type of information they find useful to share with families. So that's kind of it's always in the back of the mind of how are we communicating this. I do also think, like you were saying, the most important way to communicate truly is teacher to parent. That is the best relationship. That is the most boots on the ground experience to be able to say, look, this is what the screening data looks like, and this is what they do every day in school. So sometimes the screening is consistent with what they are able to do, and sometimes it's an assessment and their kid's not a tester. Sometimes it finds gaps where we didn't even know there were gaps, right? So like it's all about understanding and learning where the day-to-day matches with the assessment data with what is it we're doing as a partnership. So part and parcel. Maybe changing when we do conferences so it can be more meaningful. Maybe having district office put together some better reports based off of what it is people want to be able to share. I can dream up lots of things, but really it's about what they want and need. Not about me saying, hey, here, give this out. This is important. Like that's not the way it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all four?
Yeah,
Trustee Longbach?
Thank you for the comprehensive and thorough presentation. Lots of numbers. I love data, so thank you for putting it all up there. And easy to make that easy, but thorough. So I had a question about uniformity of the testing.
Yeah.
92 to 98%. So and I know like some students, maybe they're not.
Yeah.
The test is not suitable for them, but in terms of both compliance, it's like of all students that are eligible to take this or should be taking it. And then the other thing I'm wondering, like from site to site or classroom to
Yeah.
classroom, is it the same or are there discrepancies among?
So I'm gonna admit, I had a little bit of a heart attack moment, because the very first time I looked at it, I just looked at our kinder and I was like, oh my God, why is kinder at 60%? There, what is going on? And it took me looking at the schools and then the individual teachers to be like, oh my gosh, TK got counted into the K count. We have 18 kinder teachers and 7 TK. So when 7 TK, who are not supposed to be giving the assessment, have no data, it looks like only 67% of it. So when we looked, there is general compliance across. I don't want to throw kinder under the bus, but from a factual standpoint, they're at the 92% rate. Everyone else is at 97, 98. And I think that has to do with the fact that they're getting to know kids. There are always kids who come into kindergarten who are not quite ready, who are always a little bit of a challenge. And I get the question every single year, I can't do it. Okay, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm not out there going, aha, gotcha, you're missing a child. Why didn't you sit them down and torture them, right? Like there's a little bit of, I have to understand who my class is. And I do think it's unrealistic to say I want 100% at every single administration. Do I want my teachers striving for that? Yes, and I also understand some kiddos need a little bit more time. Some kiddos are still just adjusting to being here, and we'll get them when we get them. And if I miss them in that very first window, maybe I'm gonna have, and we have had some kids tested on the academic stuff during the fall Sabres window. So the second window is intended to be Sabres only, but I've got new kids. I think Ting was one who asked me, can I test new kids who just came in? Or maybe it was your teaching partner.
It's a question that we have asked.
But yes, it's available. Take the test. It's just going to be on a different report. It's not going to be in that fall timeline because Fastbridge is smart enough to know now we've moved. The target has moved a little bit. The percentiles have moved a little bit. That's fine. What we want from the data are to see who's at risk and who do we need to focus in on. And yes, it makes much more sense when we do it on a timeline together, because then we can see the overall health of the district. But from an individual one-on-one perspective, assessing the child when they're ready to be assessed is better than not assessing them at all just because I'm out of the window. So I mean, I am incredibly pleased by the participation rate that we have. I'm very thankful to the teachers for spending that time and doing all those one-on-one tests. It's a lot. Doesn't go unnoticed.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Howard?
Can you go back to the one slide that talks about our trends not changing?
Yeah, this one. No,
Nope, that one.
you want this one?
Nope, that one, yeah. So frustrating, right, to look at this data actually. And particularly frustrating given that same groups seem to be struggling and the same groups seem to be exceeding or excelling. How are we going to break that trend? Are there specific countermeasures that we can offer in addition to what we've already done? Is our data supported approach to do that? It's discouraging.
Yeah.
And all the effort that we put into identifying children that need more support, yet the same groups tend to be the ones that seem to be lagging when we go back and test.
Okay, so this is gonna be a little bit of a Pollyanna answer, but I truly do believe in it. This last year was the very first year we switched our screening data and made it really incredibly easy to see rate of growth and progress. I think we are going to start seeing changes as we continue to invest in the progress monitoring and focusing in on the kids in the red. Because now we can easily say when a kid is in the red, here are the specific ELA skills they're missing, and here is the targeted strategy. Now, I'm going to be totally honest, the Fastbridge strategies aren't the greatest. But the Fastbridge strategies aren't the greatest, mostly because you have to click 17 times to find the thing that they're trying to do, and nobody has time for that. But the progress monitoring tool is where the magic is. Because if I can see that my child's phonics are so low that I need to be doing nonsense words, then I can know that I'm going to practice CVC words. I'm going to use what's in my Heggerty books that some of the teachers have. I'm going to use what's in my Super Kids Phonics books. And we've got some other tools coming. I'm going to do this particular instructional strategy, and I'm going to test the nonsense words on a regular basis to see that I'm learning those skills. And so that added piece, I think, is what's missing. Not being really explicit as a system to monitor the intervention. Because we can assess and we can create intervention groups. And if we don't monitor the intervention and either up the intensity or change the intervention, then we're basically shooting darts in the dark. And nobody has time or energy to keep shooting darts in the dark. We've got to really get good at the data to say, let's trust what we're seeing out of Fastbridge. It is valid and reliable. Now let's get really tailored about how we're doing interventions so that they don't like when I say this, we're going to work smarter, not harder. Don't need people working 14 hours a day. We need to be really strategic at looking at the data that we have and helping folks figure out how can I share students that are at the same level? How can I make sure that when I have 3 kids in 2nd grade that are all in the same level, but in 3 different classrooms, I don't have 3 teachers busting their butt, but maybe they get pulled together and the 3 teachers take turns with that group of kids. We can be a little bit more efficient if we lean on each other. So the Pollyanna in me says that as we as a system develop better ways to monitor progress and teach people to do it, then model it and support it and then hold them accountable to it, we're gonna see improvements and we're going to see shifts. Because it's not just, I think this child needs something, but I know very strategically in reading, this is what they need. And as we move on, the next level, we'll be adding the math screener. So that we have the same information from a mathematical lens to be able to do the same thing. Trying not to drown people here. So we're doing one thing at a time. Get good at that. Then the next thing is going to be like, oh, whatever. It's just the same thing, just a different content. I mean, it's more than that, but one thing at a time. So I do think really looking at our data and finding the holes so that we can target the interventions is how we're going to make the change. I think we've been working really hard, pulling small groups, trying to place kids strategically, but we're missing that data component to really make smart decisions and know that what we're doing is making a difference. And that's why we're not seeing the gain. So yes, the groups are improving, right? The rising tide lifts all boats, but we are still, which I'm with you, it's frustrating. It's good that the rising tide is raising all boats, but we want to even the boats a little. And we don't want to have some in the crest and some in the, right? Whatever the other word is.
2 follow-up questions. One is, what would the rate of what does success look like? In other words, the rate of change. What does that look like? 5% change, 10% change a year or something like that. It's going to take time, right? You're not going to get there in a minute. And then the second question, you said something about the children are harder to teach. Could you be more specific about that?
I think we've heard time and time again, the reason we have 7 full-time counselors this year, actually 9 full-time counselors, is because our kids have greater needs, right? They are, for whatever reason, needing more SEL support. They are not getting along socially. They are having a hard time waiting their turn. They are having a hard time sharing balls on the playground. That's always a component of elementary school. And I would bet my money that if you ask every single one of the teachers in here, they would tell you the percentage of their kids today that need additional support, teaching them how to take turns, speak nicely, be patient, all of that is higher than it was 5 years ago. I mean, it's in the water. It's not anybody's fault. I mean, I could probably throw a dart and say it was the pandemic, but regardless, it is what it is. And we as professionals need to adjust to it. It's different. And so when I say, I think we've done a pretty good job maintaining the levels, even though my day-to-day life for the teacher is harder, I think that is real. They are working their butts off to maintain levels, and we are asking them to improve levels. To go back to your question of rate of change, I think one of the cool things that we're gonna see in Fastbridge as we implement the progress monitoring, we are needing to focus our energy on the kids in the red, right? So the rate of growth for them needs to be higher than the rate of growth for everyone else. And that's where we need to change. We are oftentimes so focused on what am I doing for the high kids? Because the high kids and the high performing kids and the advanced kids have parents who are beating down my door saying, what are you doing to challenge them? What are you doing to challenge and make sure they're ready for not the next grade level, but 3 grade levels beyond? Quite frankly, that's not my responsibility as a system. My responsibility is to make sure those kids in the red, in the pink, whatever you want to call it, high risk, not meeting standards, they're my priority, and making sure that they make more than a year's growth every year is the only way we're going to get them caught up. And once we start using the progress monitoring tools, we can see the expected rate of growth and the actual rate of growth. So then we can make determinations of, do we need to intensify the intervention or do we need to change the intervention? Do we need to continue what's going on and then maybe dig deeper into what's going on? These are all pieces of understanding the whole child. Not that everything ends all, it's not that the end all and be all is that there's something wrong, right? The whole goal of having good data and good assessments and good SSTs is that we have given tailored interventions and we're monitoring progress so that we're not calling parents in to say, there's something innately wrong with your child, unless we are actually seeing that the rate of growth is not matching all of the effort being put in a strategic manner. Then we have reason to say, look, let's figure out what's going on and why is this child not developing like we would expect? And then we go down that path. But this gives us all that information so that we can spend our time just more strategically. I think that's me. Yes, that means, and I said this at the SSC meeting, where we talk about all kids, but the reality of it is, I'm not going to be spending time equally with all kids. I should be spending more time with the kids who are in the red than the kids who are 3 levels above. I'm going to make sure I'm giving them meaningful instruction, and I'm going to develop projects so that they have a way to shine and excel. But my focus is on the kids who can't read and write and do math by 3rd grade. Because we know what the future holds for them if they don't have their skills. Oh, social justice lesson today. We'll get there. It's frustrating and I feel you too, but I think we have to be thankful that 80% of our kids are making it. So we have 20% to focus on, unlike some districts that are focusing on 60, 70, 80. Like that is a daunting task. 20% is still a daunting task, but it's better than what it could be.
There's no part of me that's disagreeing with you.
I know.
My resting board face.
So, I mean, we'll get there. So I told you it was a little bit Pollyanna. I do think the more we lean on each other and the more we look at the data and work strategically, we'll do it faster.
Thank you.
And thank the parents for supporting it because that's a large reason why we have such, right? Like the partnership is why we do so well.
Thank you. So I guess just one question that I had was that I'm trying to make the connection as Principal Higgins mentioned is connecting to something else.
Mm-hmm.
So Principal Higgins also was saying that they're using release time to see how their colleagues are accomplishing their education. Have teachers been able to have a chance to have release time to help students with targeted interventions?
We have not explored that. We have not explored that because release time from my classroom to work with a handful of kids means that the other 20 of my kids have a substitute teacher. And while we generally have very good substitute teachers, I would probably not be going out on too much of a limb that the teacher with the kids is better than a substitute with the kids. So while I want to focus on my kids in the red, I'm not trying to do so at the detriment of the others. So.
And then I guess, maybe a different tactic for that then is if the kids are in the red, do they qualify for additional supports from like the reading specialists?
So the reading specialists, we just had our monthly meeting today. They look through at their school level and go basically from the bottom up. They start with all the kids in the red in first grade and pull them because we know early intervention is the most meaningful, right? Like that's the most useful. Catch them early, catch them up. So they do, and that's how our reading specialists end up with sometimes caseloads of 65 kids. And then we're constantly with every screening reevaluating and trying to accelerate kids and move them back into the classroom, and it's a back and forth. And I think that's that partnership too of ensuring, and we talked about this last year, and then many, it's this constant piece of ensuring that the reading specialist is truly supplemental. Right? Like those kids should be getting in the classroom and reading specialists. And it takes coordination. That's another level of what they're doing. The reading specialists are partnering with the classroom teacher to make sure they're not just teaching the same thing, but they are either with higher intensity or more specific skill or practicing something very different, aligned to what's happening in the classroom. So kids get extra practice. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something that's happening. We have ELOC for, a different population of kids, but at every single school, I've had parents and mostly principals reach out to say, you know what, this kid doesn't technically qualify. I have space for, can you? And we work those through on one-on-one cases. Right? I have a couple kids who are outside of the age range, but really need it, who are participating. So that is something that we can do as well with nurse.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I do want to give the other board members a chance if they have another question, so they followed my instructions well, for the most part. So, is there?
I'd be happy with one.
Let's go for trustee Bruno first.
Ball writing slide.
Yeah.
Again, maybe I heard you wrong, but you said that you test grades 1 through 8.
1 through 8 now. Kindergarten does take it, but we give them a little bit of reprieve because, 5-year-olds.
Right.
And wrangling them to do writing. They'll take their writing assessment in December.
What about grades 1 and 2?
1 through 8.
Yeah.
One.
Like, I don't see,
Oh.
I'm reading it wrong. I don't see the numbers for grades 1 and 2.
For CASP.
Yeah.
Because they're not tested in CASP until 3rd grade. So
Got it.
all this 1,800 students includes everybody in 1st through 8th grade.
There we go. Okay, and then not in the.
Yeah, so of the 1,800, 52.6 are meeting fall standards, which feels low, but I think it's important when we look at our CASP. This is our most recent CASP claim data, and we look at each of the individual grades. You can see ultimately that equates to the percentage of kids above standard. So yes, this is a low kind of performance, but it is a different rating scale, and it is a hard rating scale. So this is kind of like saying if I were grading on a curve, it would be more like 75% of my kids are meeting if I want to look at how it translates to performance on the state test.
Yeah.
It's a different measure.
Yep.
So this is also just ballparking, but it's lower than we're used to seeing, but it's not concerning because what we are seeing in our standardized writing tests is that the percentage of meeting equals the percentage exceeding.
Got it. And then same question, part B.
Yeah.
For grade 7, I'm just curious of why it's higher there. Is it just that we're teaching differently, that it was a good year?
Something to look at. Not something we've had consistent data on. The claim data just came back.
Yeah.
Because for a couple of years post-pandemic, there was an abbreviated test and we didn't have claim data. So I can't really make a good statement about that.
Thank you.
Trustee Cost?
So
Or we'll just say Lynn is amazing.
There it is.
there you go.
Knew it.
I mean, that's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Validated. So when you mentioned a few times, it's a slow roll. So understand things are in balance and people, to get into a routine, it takes practice with the cycles and getting used to the systems. And of course, when you change out systems, right, it's not easy. But all that said, when you kind of in your head are thinking slow roll, we're going to roll this out and do this. And like, when do you feel like, what is that period of time? How many years are we talking about? Do we then get up to speed where we're at some point like clicking, like what, when you mentioned,
And I think
but what's it, what do you,
This is the year for progress monitoring and learning the tools.
okay,
I think there's a lot of skill in learning how to read data and how to apply it. And so I'm half joking and not being totally facetious when I say, when we bring on the math screeners and this type of when we bring on FastBridge math, it will be simpler than when we bring on reading. There is an economy of scale. I've learned how to give the assessment. I've learned how to use the platform itself. And in spending time this year looking at what do the intervention data tell me and how do I then determine how to use the intervention tool and monitor progress and what the rate of progress means in the learning this year, that's data analysis skill is applicable. So that when I envision doing the math screening in the 25-26 school year. I don't know. We'll see how this year goes. It may be that we need a second year of progress monitoring. So it may be that we're doing full progress monitoring in ELA and math in the 26-27 school year. I already have a handful of teachers because they know they have access to it, already giving the math screener and finding it useful, easy. Yeah, I mean, whatever, not to put words in your mouth, yeah.
I mean, it was really helpful for me to see where my kids are starting at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
Especially with like the math programs that we're having in seventh grade.
So there's this optional, like people have been reaching out and asking at all the sites and all the levels. I've got teachers at every grade level trying and doing, and the message is it's there, you're welcome to use it, you're not required to. Because not trying to drown my teachers here, but I do think there is some level of, particularly when you get to fourth grade and above, both tests are 100% automated. So you're talking about a 45-minute window one day and then a 45-minute window another day. It's different at K1, 2, where in both content areas, there's still a one-on-one fluency measure of basic math facts and letters and sounds and nonsense words and all sorts of fun. Really useful information, but it takes time. So I don't think it's that slow.
okay,
Full progress monitoring ELA this year, maybe allowing them a second year because it is hard work to do, but also adding the math screener next year.
thank you.
I'll add to just my thinking because I know our approach is right. Research would suggest our approach is right. The more front loading we can do of gaps in a quicker cycle, better off our kiddos are going to be, right? I'm actually facilitating a conversation. We've had the conversation with Jason Yateman. I'm actually facilitating a conversation with him and other superintendents in the county next month. And I've just been doing some of the work. He talks about teachers as, being brain engineers, and education, sculpts brain development, which is absolutely true, right? Like having this data is important to know what to do. And then there's the actual time to do it and the bandwidth to do it. And we see those gaps across districts, across systems, across states. I know we're doing the right thing for kids, but a matter of, our time and our ability to continue and push is a challenge. And that's something that I think not only all of us in this room are grappling with, but as a system across our state and across our nation, we need to grapple with that because it's not in our local environments, it's across the board, right? So really looking at how we're influencing and our ability to address the data that we find. I think, like Ching Pei said, it's not going to take us that long to get the systems into play to get the data, but then, how long is it going to take to actually make that difference, right? Dr. Yateman talks about 160-hour intervention courses that kids take over, I think 160 hours is 4 hours a day, 5 days a week for, I think, 6 weeks. Right, and then we see improved growth, right? Like developing those systems that allow us to do that type of intensive intervention. We see programs like ELOP that are quite frankly probably not intensive enough. They're an hour here and there, they're interstructured with other things. So I think we're doing our best and pedaling as quickly as we can, but like systematically, we have to look at how we advocate for that too. So a lot of good work happening and a lot more questions to ask. Yeah, we are brain engineers and we're changing kids' brains.
The research has always shown that the most important factor is a highly trained teacher, right? Like, yeah, I geek out over and I'm the nerd about like, what are we offering? What are we preparing for? And the hard balance is after working a full day with kids, people don't have it in them to do afternoon things. Like if you're talking about release time, doing release time for professional learning to me is what makes the most sense in a way, because I'm fresh and I'm treating you like a professional. But unfortunately, in the world of teaching, that also means I have to make sub plans. And then I have to clean up my class after the sub's been in there, because not all subs are equal. So then what's the other option? Like go on a weekend? Not ideal. Add to the work year? Those are the tricky things of how do we balance it in a way that respects people's time and is also realistic and sustainable. If I had my druthers, far different schedule. But not just BRSSD, but like public school as a whole. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Trustee Linebaugh? Thank you. Trustee Howard?
So, make you laugh.
Because I thought you were gonna say no. And I was wrong.
So as the assessment tool
Yeah.
rolls out and people get used to doing the assessment tool, that's a good thing, right? If you get, but it's also the data and what do you do with it? And
Yes.
so I hear you advocating for teaching. I'm wondering, is there also additional supports that are made available to our educators so that if they have a question about, say, how do I intervene best for this particular issue? Are there best practices that we share out, or are there people on site, say just like our principal or other educators that can be a resource to help shape those teams and also shape how we intervene best?
That is one of kind of the work products that we are aiming for in terms of, yes, we have power standards identified. We have to think about scope and sequence, but then the next piece is what is our principals are doing walks of, we're doing instructional rounds together as we're trying to identify our instructional core, because the next piece, I do think the organic piece is we have to come up with specific strategies that are aligned across the district. We know what we need to do. What we are as a system not willing to do, I think, is say, you must do these, because we know that when we are so dictator-like, the moment the leader changes, the practice goes away, and that's not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for, we're going to look together and learn about what we know research says works. We're going to see what makes sense in our context, and together as a school team decide, this makes sense here in BRSSD. These are our signature practices and strategies so that we can have some consistency, so we can do lesson study together, so we can use release time to plan and lesson study and do the things to be better at our jobs and feed our souls at the same time. And then we can say, well, let's actually try the strategy. Are we doing it consistently? The other piece now, you always ask the principals what they want. What I would love is for every single school to have their own instructional coach to do exactly that. Because the people in the classroom are the ones who know the best.
Yep.
I haven't been in a classroom in 15 years. They are the ones who are living the change and trying things out. And many of them are gracious enough to let me come in and try things and play around in their classroom, but they're the experts. And I would love for there to be someone we pull from every site as their instructional expert to support the instructional leader in delivering coaching and strategy and modeling and push and release, different way, but that's also lots of money.
Well, to follow up, the way that evolved with counselors is we had a couple of counselors. And they serve more than one site. So is there room for an innovative idea perhaps starting with instructional coaches that are internal that may share sites so that then it starts to build and you develop that capacity to have instructional coaches that target certain groups.
I would happily take your direction to explore if you'd like. And we will ask Reese where we're gonna find the money. Teaching pay is too expensive and that's okay, but yes, right? Like, we can do anything, we can't do everything. If that is something we are valuing, then I think we can look into it. There are ways, absolutely. We'll figure it out, but we can seek out grants, but like, that would be if I had my druthers. I agree. Sorry, Dan.
No, I'm just thinking I have another idea for a meeting I have tomorrow.
Anything else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You go back to the student groups.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understood this right. I mean, Jim asked it earlier. I think I'm actually I'll be honest, I think I'm re-asking the same question maybe. When you look at the patterns here, and if the idea is, I want to overuse equity, but if the idea is to lift the average performance level of the groups that are lower, are you saying by focusing on all kids in the red across all groups, that will lift the performance level of the groups that need the lift?
Yes, because the kids in the red are statistically speaking, those kids in the lower performance, in the lower performing student groups. Right, like these kids that are at an average 2.0 are a high percentage of our kids in the red in the ELA screeners. So if I focus on them and give them the skill that they need to close the gap, they will necessarily do better and their average scores will go up.
So there's not necessarily a focus on necessarily lifting the skill level of, say, socioeconomic or English learner or Hispanic or Native. You just focus on all the reds.
Yeah.
And that will therefore.
If I'm focusing on the kids who are not at grade level, that's gonna hit all of them because we're gonna pull them up and
Okay.
They're not equally, but they are distributed amongst. When we look at the students in the red, they are distributed primarily amongst the groups here that are lower performing.
Yeah.
Every student group has students in the red. But when I look at the bulk of the students in the red and map out who they are, there's a higher percentage of them who are Black and African American. There's a higher percentage of them who are low socioeconomic status than there are Asian, which maps to the overall CASP score, right? I mean, because obviously if 90% of your group is above and 10% is below, your average is gonna be higher. Mathematically speaking, focusing in on all the kids in the red is how we're going to close this gap.
Yeah. Okay.
And not saying this kid is performing low because he's an English learner. It just takes time to learn. Yes, there's truth to that.
Right.
And yes, there's also truth to we can be very specific in what we do to support and scaffold and make sure there are labels and make sure there are sentence frames and make sure we use GLAD strategies and not just write them off that they're struggling because they're language learners.
Do we do specific supports for language learners or do we just put groups of kids in the red?
Our students who are language learners do also spend time with our reading ELD specialists. And for the first time, we purchased a newcomer curriculum this year. They just got their training on it today. Their materials are in the back of the room. They arrived earlier this week and I am planning on divvying them up tomorrow and delivering them either tomorrow or Monday.
So there are some measures that are like literally intended for a group. that maybe needs equity. Okay, all right.
Yes, there's both.
There we go.
We're focusing in the general ed classroom on the kids in the red
Yeah.
and our reading specialists and our ELD specialists who are funded by LCF dollars are focusing on, in addition to what they're doing, they're getting the supplemental for that group. And then the ELOP, the EL foster youth low SES also have an additional invitation to ELOP. So then their day can grow to 9 hours instead of, so they're getting classroom and specialists and ELOP attention.
And is it fair to say if I'm like, again, looking at just these 2 years, hoping to eventually see either this or again, equality, equity, whatever you want to call it, some of the supports you're describing are relatively new.
Yeah.
Right, so this is like when would see change, what might be in the next year or two, because some of these are like conceptually a new concept.
Some of them are relatively new and we're only testing 3rd through 8th graders. So I would say probably in 2 years' time, I would expect to see
There we go, okay.
some noticeable change.
Yeah.
Because then the balance tips, right? Like our current 7th and 8th graders weren't part of.
Yeah.
So.
And last one, some of these numbers are relatively low. Is this students self-identifying when I look at these numbers?
No, this is based off, it is self-identified in the student information system. And then we pull that through CalPADS. So it is official state level data of the number of students who fit into each category. And remember, it is only 3rd through 8th grade students. That's not our full population.
So do they have the option to not identify?
Yes.
But that's not, that group isn't listed here. So when I see some groups that are like only 20 kids, I imagine there's 30 of the 4,000 who just chose not to identify, right?
There's,
Or more,
I mean, I don't know.
but that's not a
This is,
group.
this is where I feel like I'm not a principal,
Kinda curious.
so I don't see the kids on it. Like, I don't have a visual sense.
Okay, I'm just imagining that like in these numbers, there would be a group that may be bigger than some of the lower population groups.
There might
Just
be.
check the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There absolutely might be.
I want to say that most folks, when they're enrolling,
Mhm.
Will check the box.
Parents?
Mhm.
And that's where these numbers are coming from actually, is parent and data?
It's parent report to us that we then upload to CalPADS,
Okay.
which is part of our official data.
So this data all comes, once we register a student, we
Right.
put their student, the student in the information system. It's all data that's uploaded to the state and transfers right up with students.
Right, but in the. Okay, so it was like in the 2,600 parents who do it, one of the choices is.
Decline to say, yeah.
Exactly, except for one of the categories here is not that.
Right, no, decline to say
It's
is
possible,
not one of the
and
categories.
just a number of Black kids chose not to identify. So it's something, there's a part where like, you might be missing some data actually, is what I'm saying maybe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In terms of the student group, we're in terms of where they fit in this, yes, this is not a comprehensive student group listing.
Yeah, yeah,
This is the basic state choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But those students who decline to stay are still in the overall average.
Fair, yeah, I got you, okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
You guys should have left before. You don't want
Thank you all.
Have a nice evening.
See you soon. Yeah, you will. Lori, do you want me to come earlier than 9:30?
Whatever you want. All
Okay.
right, we are on to item number 13, approval of resolution number 2024/25-6, revised authorized signatories, and we're going to hear from Superintendent DeGuara,
Yes.
and this is an action item.
This item tonight is to officially bring Reese into the signature role. We do have to identify with the county and as a district official who can sign for the district. We'll be adding Reese. And actually, we're also adding Ching Pei. Ching Pei had not been a previous signator. She does a lot of the work through Ed Services. So tonight, recommending approval of the revised authorized signatures. Myself, CBO Reese, Assistant Superintendent Hu, and Director Eastburn.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I move the board approve resolution 2024-25-6, revised authorized signatures as recommended.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Passes unanimously. And then item number 14. Consideration and public notice of the Belmont-Redwood Shores School District proposal to the California School Employees Association, Chapter 308, regarding the classified unit collective bargaining agreement negotiations for 24 to 27. This is an information item, and we'll hear from Ms. Eastburn, Director of Human Resources.
Thank you. As you know, the district will begin successor negotiations soon with CSEA. So items 14 and 15 go hand in hand. Item 14, information only, is the district's sunshine document listing the articles we intend to open for negotiations. And item 15 is CSEA's sunshine document listing articles they wish to open in negotiations with the district. Both parties are currently in preparation for our first meeting, which is next week.
Thank you. Yes.
Is this like a 2-year contract or
So typically, it's a 3-year contract.
a 3-year? Okay.
For
Past it's been a 3-year.
language, and then it depends on how many years for salary and benefits.
And that expired June 30th.
It expired June 30th of 24.
Okay.
So they're operating under what stands as.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I think we're all set. Thank you. So that took care of items 14 and 15. We're now on to item 16, CSBA Board Policy Update, September 2024, first reading. And we're going to hear from Superintendent DeGuara.
We're getting to know our board policy handbook really well at this point. This is the fall round of updates, quite a few policies here. This is for the first read. We'll be taking any feedback from the board or community as they come in, and we'll make updates in time for a second read. If there's any changes or shifts, I will make sure that we're sharing that with the board as it comes.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Trustee Linebaugh.
Couple comments. So I read board bylaw, whenever the 9,000s come up, I always pay special attention because they're bylaws that govern our actions. So 9010, I read through that, and it's something good for us all to be cognizant about. A lot of time people misunderstand when we're talking at an event or something, it's like, we don't represent the board, we represent our personal opinions. And actually in this one, it talked about social media. And it actually talked about putting a disclaimer on social media. So I actually last night, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to my Facebook, and under description, I said, comments I make on this on Facebook are mine only and do not represent the opinion of the board. So that's something that I did, and it was good reading that and making it formal in our bylaws. So just something that I did there. Another couple of the bylaws, policies. Some of the policies talk about AI, and I know we have that scheduled for next week. But it's good to see some of these policies are coming out, and CSBA is thinking about AI and how to bring it forward. There was policy 4040 and 6163.4. One on the staff employee side, one on the student side of using technology. I like the fact that it's encouraging staff to use AI to make their tasks more efficient. But then, of course, we need to be clear with staff what the appropriate use of that is. So it's good that it's actually calling that out. And I know we could go down a rabbit hole, but we have next meeting on the schedule to talk about that. So it's good to see things going. And I'd encourage the board to approve these coming up next, but then also I'd approve in the future to revisit these as we have more AI discussions and craft them to what the policies in our district they want to be. Because CSBA actually recommended is like the board should look at these and revise them to their own district's needs. So I'm sure that conversation will be upcoming.
Thank you, trustee Linebaugh. Any other questions or comments?
Process question, just as we look at these, like I look at the attachments to read the things, but then some of them that are highlighted, are those being dropped?
The highlighted ones in yellow actually on this list are ones that are not currently up. So they don't have the link, and they all the ones that are yellow, if you look at current policy, it says no. I think this was just our internal staff way of helping us navigate through those as well. So that's the color coding there.
And then the recommendation is like
and the
current policy and do not adopt typically for those?
Typically, yeah, typically optional policies. I think we, as a practice, we review them and see if it still should be optional, we leave it optional. But if not, sometimes we do have optional policies that are adopted.
Like a lot of stuff that applies to high schools.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, still, I'm actually confused by that. And the doubles.
The doubles.
Yeah, like employee use of technology, like one is yes, one is no.
So board policy is a yes. So you have three within our board policies handbook. They're broken out in a couple of different ways. There's BP, the board policy. There's AR, administrative regulations. There's E, which is the exhibit. In this case, and I will say, trustee Linebaugh had shared, we actually currently have the exhibit in there. We are going to choose to leave it out because that's one that may continue to change as we adopt AI and as we shift. And we may adjust that for our employee groups and our student group as we go along.
Okay.
So the exhibit is typically going to be, I'm thinking about policies that have had exhibits, requirements for districts to inform community. And the exhibit is 30 different legal codes that serves as a reference.
Right.
In this case, the exhibit would be, what is the district going to send home or include in the handbook? Right. So we don't always include the exhibits in the board policy. And then the final the final one on here is BB, and that's the board bylaw section.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And when I see something that is still like the same, that is both board policy and exhibit, there's no like importance to one, not the other, or whatever.
Correct. So if we were walking through
technology,
employee use of technology, probably not a good example because the AR is not necessarily up there. Let me see if the so let's just go on that one. So the board policy would say the overall vision for technology and use by staff. If there was an administrative regulation, it would say the specifics of how the district is going to carry that out. And the exhibit is, in this case, the notification to employees that helps support the board policy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, in this case, it was the acceptable use agreement.
Yeah.
What the exhibit was.
Anything else on the board policy update?
We've been through quite a few board policies in the last few months.
Yes, yes.
Only like 150 pages each.
I will say, it is, really good to do it this way. And in this cadence, it feels like a lot as we're going through it in each update. But if you allow a year to lapse, it's a downward spiral.
Thank you. All right, so item number 7, future board meeting agenda items.
Yeah, I think we, highlights, next meeting, the focus, will be on Fox, Elementary School. And we will, be bringing in a guest speaker, likely through, we're still working out the details, so I don't want to say too much, but likely a guest speaker from Stanford, will be joining us. She's been doing some work in the AI space. We're trying to partner, and craft some scope of work around information for our board in terms of governance and practices that we need to be thinking as a board. We're gonna co-craft similar opportunities for teachers about thinking about AI in classroom space and using it to as Ching Pei said, work smarter, not harder. And then in the community space, how parents can be thinking about AI and working with their students. So really trying to do that introduction from a multi-pronged approach. Likely board in November, likely community and staff in January. And then in December, the highlights, Reese will steal the show with the first interim fiscal solvency report. We'll have our board recognition, bond oversight. Will be giving their work, and we'll work through an aspect of the strategic plan update. Probably pick one specific area and build that up. Mm-hmm.
And then will we be having 2 meetings in December?
We will, December 12th and December 16th. So the December 12th meeting, so as I share with the board, there's a specific regulation around budget that we need to be working through the first interim report. And there's a specific time when new board members actually have to be seated and quote unquote organized. And those 2 dates actually, we had code 2 different ways, don't align. So forces us to have another meeting. Silver lining, it allows our current board to wrap things up kind of in a nice December package. And have a little bit of a celebration. It allows our new board to be seated all at once and do the organizational meeting without kind of some of the awkward transition that we've had in the past. So yes, 2 meetings.
Great. And then for the December 16th meeting, will there still start at like 6 o'clock, 6:15 for the
Yes.
open
Yeah.
session?
Yes.
Okay.
Same plan. It'll likely be just quite a bit shorter meeting.
Sure.
Yeah. Just reorganization.
Sure. And ceremonial swearing
Yes.
in.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Great. Any additional thoughts for future board meeting agenda items? All right. We do not need to go back to closed session. So, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I second it.
All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No one is opposed. This meeting is adjourned at 8:27 PM.